Have you ever felt completely alone? So alone that maybe you thought about ending it all?
It's a heavy question to start with.
It really is. And today, we're tackling a story that deals with exactly that vulnerability. We're looking into the case of Takahiro Shiraishi, who became known as the Japanese Twitter killer.
A truly disturbing case.
Absolutely. And we want to be clear, this isn't just about recounting monstrous acts. Our aim here is to really understand, using the sources we have, how someone so vulnerable reaching out for help online could fall into such a terrifying trap. It's quite chilling.
It really is. The details are grim, but understanding the how is crucial, maybe even more than the what.
Exactly. And right from the beginning, we want to express our deepest sympathies for the victims and their families. The suffering they went through is just unimaginable.
Absolutely. It's a story that demands sensitivity. The sources really paint a picture of methodical deception and, frankly, profound betrayal.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Takahiro Shiraishi. You might expect, clear red flags from childhood, a really troubled past.
Right, the typical narrative sometimes.
But on the surface, things looked, well, pretty normal. His parents wanted him in a private school, but he chose a regular public one.
Okay, fairly standard choice for a kid.
But here's where it gets unsettling early on. Apparently, he figured out pretty quickly how to get attention and even extra allowance from his parents.
How?
By pretending he was having thoughts of hurting himself.
Wow. So manipulation started young. That's quite telling, isn't it? Using emotional leverage like that.
It really is. It wasn't just about attention. It seems like it was almost practice, like learning how to trick people, how to pull their strings.
It definitely hints at a pattern, a lack of empathy maybe that just got magnified later, a kind of calculated control, even back then.
And that pattern, that need for control, seems to thread into his work life before the killings, right?
Yeah.
He had this job as a scout.
Can you explain what that means in this context?
Sure. So in this case, it meant he was recruiting women for places like hostess bars or certain kinds of cafes. He'd get paid for each person he brought in.
Okay. A bit of a gray area, perhaps, depending on the specific.
Exactly. And here's the crucial part. He actually got arrested for this scouting work. He was on probation when the murders began.
Ah, okay. That's a really significant detail because didn't he use that probation as a kind of justification?
He did. It's quite chilling, actually. He claimed his fear of getting a tougher sentence because he was already on probation was the reason he killed his victims.
Instead of just, say, robbing or assaulting them?
Precisely. He basically argued that if he hadn't been caught for scouting, he'd have just kept doing that and never become a killer at all.
Which is such a self-serving argument, isn't it? It completely deflects responsibility for the choice to kill. The irony is just staggering, blaming a lesser crime for committing far worse ones.
Absolutely chilling.
No.
So let's talk about how this descent really gathered pace. The killing started around mid-2017, and his method for finding victims was incredibly specific.
He used Twitter, right?
Yes. He actively searched for people posting about feeling suicidal or just expressing deep sadness, really vulnerable individuals.
And how did he approach them?
Very deceptively. He'd act incredibly caring, mirror their feelings, make them feel understood. He'd promise to help them, maybe even help them die if that's what they thought they wanted. It was all an act to gain their trust.
It's terrifying how easily he could exploit that online space. People reaching out in their darkest moments, finding what they thought was empathy.
Only to be met with the ultimate betrayal.
Exactly. The trust they placed in him, thinking he understood, thinking he could help. It's just heartbreaking. It really underscores the dangers online, the need for awareness.
And support for people who are struggling.
Definitely. Both online and off.
So once he gained their trust, he'd lure them to his small apartment. And get this. With his first victim, he actually borrowed money from her.
Borrowed money.
Yeah, supposedly to pay his rent. Is just another layer of manipulation.
Unbelievable. And once they were at his apartment,
that's when the horror began. He'd offer them drinks, but they were drugged. When they were unconscious, he'd sexually assault them. Then he'd tie them up. Often he'd hang them, causing death by asphyxiation.
Oh my God.
And he told them to get rid of their phones beforehand, to cover his tracks.
So calculated. Every step designed to isolate them, control them, ensure they couldn't call for help, and make it harder to trace him later.
Completely. It wasn't impulsive, it was planned.
The terror they must have felt. It's hard to even comprehend. The methodical nature just makes it so much worse. It's pure evil. My heart just aches for what they went through.
And then came the aftermath, which is just as gruesome, if not more so. He'd move the bodies to his bathtub for dismemberment.
And he became efficient at it.
Shockingly so. Sources say sometimes it took him only a couple of hours, using tools like knives, saws, even scissors.
How did he dispose of the remains?
Well, the flesh and organs, he apparently wrapped them in things like absorbent pads and newspaper and put them out with the regular building trash.
Just like garbage.
Exactly. And the bones, he boiled them. Sometimes with strong-smelling things like kimchi or Chinese stew.
To mask the smell.
Yes, and then he stored the boiled bones, including the heads, in these large boxes in his apartment. He put cat litter in the boxes.
Cat litter? Why?
Apparently to absorb moisture and maybe help with any remaining odor, but also simply to save space. He had 9 victims in a small apartment.
The sheer callousness, boiling bones, storing heads in boxes, it's beyond words. The complete lack of respect for human life is just staggering. It's methodical horror.
So how did this finally come to an end? How was he caught?
It started with his last victim, we'll call her Sophia.
Okay.
Her brother was incredibly worried when she disappeared. He started looking into her online activity.
And he found something.
He did. He found her Twitter posts, the dark thoughts she'd been sharing. And crucially, he found her conversations with Takahiro. Apparently, Takahiro used at least 2 different accounts.
Wow, so the brother's investigation was key.
Absolutely critical. It shows how important family concern can be and how those digital footprints, even seemingly private ones, can sometimes become vital evidence.
And this led to another person getting involved, right? A woman named Jenny?
Yes. Jenny had also been communicating with Takahiro, but she realized the danger after Sophia's disappearance became known and the brother raised alarms. She bravely decided to cooperate with the police.
That takes incredible courage.
It really does. She essentially agreed to help set a trap. They planned a meeting at a train station. Undercover police were there, watching.
Okay, so the police were ready.
They were. Takahiro showed up at the station, but something must have felt off to him. He suddenly changed his mind, texted Jenny saying he couldn't make it.
Oh, no. So did he get away?
Well, he left the station, but it was too late.
The police had already seen him.
Exactly. They had identified him and followed him right back to his apartment building.
So they knew where he lived.
Yes. Later, police went to his door. They started asking him about Sophia. He apparently got very nervous.
I can imagine.
And then, according to reports, he just pointed to one of the 9 large storage boxes in his tiny apartment.
And said what?
He said, "She's in there." And then he confessed, said he'd killed 9 people.
Just like that. Pointing to a box? Oh my God.
The relief that he was finally caught must have been immense. But then the immediate horror of finding 9 victims. 9 boxes. It's unimaginable for the police and devastating for the families who finally got answers, but in the most horrific way possible. Our hearts just go out to them having to face that.
It's truly sickening. And his confessions later, during interviews and the trial, they offer a glimpse into just how dark his mind was.
Did he show any remorse?
Very, very little, if any. He rarely seemed sad or regretful. In fact, he described his first murder as giving him a kind of excitement.
Excitement.
Yeah, a weird thrill from, quote, doing something wrong. And he also admitted, disturbingly, that he was attracted to dead bodies, even took pictures.
That's pure depravity. The complete lack of empathy is just chilling. It really shows the core of his psychology, doesn't it? A total disconnect from human feeling.
Absolutely. And remember the dismemberment. He claimed he learned how to do that from the internet.
So the internet was both his hunting ground and his textbook for horror.
It seems that way. He initially said his motive was money, tricking vulnerable women out of their savings.
But that changed?
He admitted later that after the first murder, it became more about sexual assault. That became an obsession. But he stuck to his method, targeting depressed women on Twitter, because, in his words, they were easier to trick and make my bidding. Pretending to understand them was his key tactic.
It shows how motives can shift. Or perhaps the initial motive was just a convenient lie, and the darker desires were always there. The internet just provided the means and the victims.
And when he talked about regrets, they were unbelievably self-serving.
What did he regret?
He regretted Jenny, the woman who helped the police, but only because contacting her led to his arrest.
Not because he felt bad for potentially targeting her.
Exactly. He said he felt maybe a little bad for Sophia, the first victim, just because they'd spent some time together before he killed her. He felt bad for one victim's child, because they grew up without a mother.
Okay, tiny flicker of something, maybe?
Maybe. But then he also regretted killing another victim too quickly because he thought he could have gotten more money out of her first.
Unbelievable. It always comes back to him.
Always. He was even proud of overpowering his only male victim.
Yeah.
And the blame game continued, blaming his probation, blaming Twitter for making it too easy, never himself.
Zero accountability. His regrets are all about inconvenience or missed opportunities for him. It's classic narcissistic or psychopathic thinking, externalizing all blame. He saw himself as the victim somehow.
And his plans, if he hadn't been caught, just as chilling, he spoke quite calmly about it.
What did he say he would have done?
He planned to dispose of the bodies he had, end his apartment lease, move in with another woman he'd met online, reset his life, and then just continue killing.
Just reset and repeat, no hesitation.
None. He even mused that if he'd only kill one person, maybe he could still have a future, maybe become a monk or something.
A monk! The disconnect is staggering.
And the ultimate irony. He expressed concern about how painful his own execution by hanging might be. And he even asked an interviewer for help finding a wife who could bring him snacks in prison.
Worried about his pain, asking for snacks after causing such unimaginable suffering and death by hanging.
The contrast is just. It leaves you speechless.
It really does. It's a glimpse into a mind completely detached from reality, from humanity, utterly self-absorbed, even facing death.
So the trial concluded on December 15, 2020. It was obviously a long, agonizing process for the families.
Understandably.
He was found guilty on all 18 charges: robbery, murder, sexual assault, mutilation, hiding the bodies. The sentence was death.
A fitting sentence, many would argue.
The judge apparently took an hour and a half just to read out the full sentence, because there were so many counts, so many victims. And Takahiro. Reports say he was calm, more worried about being lonely in prison than the death sentence itself.
Still focused on himself right to the end. But for the families, the verdict must have brought at least some sense of closure, some measure of justice, however inadequate.
In Japan, the death penalty means execution by hanging. There was, as you'd expect, a lot of online discussion about his sentence.
I can imagine.
Some felt it was grimly appropriate he'd die the same way he killed many of his victims. Others worried his twisted mind might actually find some perverse satisfaction in it.
That's a disturbing thought.
But the end finally came. On Friday, June 27, 2025, Takahiro Shiraishi was executed by hanging at the Tokyo detention house.
Bringing the legal chapter to a close.
Yes, it was actually Japan's first execution in nearly 3 years. And with that, the story of the Twitter killer ended.
A truly somber end to a horrific saga. Justice served, perhaps, but the scars remain for so many.
Absolutely. This whole deep dive looking into Takahiro Shiraishi, it's such a stark, chilling reminder, isn't it, of the dangers that can hide online, especially for people who are really struggling.
It really is. It highlights the urgent need for us to be more aware, more supportive of those going through dark times.
We need to look out for each other, make sure our online spaces and our real-world interactions are driven by compassion, not this kind of predatory exploitation.
Exactly. This case serves as such a somber warning. These monsters, they can hide in plain sight, using our very human need for connection against us. So it really is a call to all of us listening. Stay aware. Look out for the vulnerable people around you, online and offline. Let's try to make empathy and compassion the default, not exploitation. So maybe the question for you, listening right now, is what really stands out to you from this chilling story? And how can we, all of us together, build safer, more genuinely supportive spaces for people who are reaching out for help?